The blood on Olivia Morrison's hands had dried 3 days ago, but she could still see it every time she closed her eyes, even though the stagecoach robbery that killed her husband and infant daughter had happened 6 weeks past in the summer of 1878. She sat on the splintered bench outside the general store in Kingman, Arizona, staring at nothing while the desert sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty main street. The women of the town whispered as they passed, their eyes filled with pity that made Olivia want to scream. She had become the town's tragedy, the young widow who had lost everything in one violent afternoon when masked men had stopped their stage between Prescott and Kingman. Thomas had tried to fight back when they demanded the strong box. The baby had been crying. Everything after that was gunfire and blood and screams that still echoed in Olivia's dreams. She was 22 years old and felt ancient. "Mrs. Morrison, you should come inside out of this heat," Martha Henderson said gently, her plump face creased with concern. "You will make yourself sick sitting out here." Olivia did not move. She barely heard the older woman anymore. The pity in everyone's voices had become white noise, a constant hum of sympathy that did nothing to ease the hollow ache in her chest where her heart used to be. The sound of heavy boots on the wooden boardwalk made her glance up briefly. A man was walking toward the general store, and he was unlike anyone Olivia had seen in Kingman's modest streets. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they seemed to block out the sun. His buckskin shirt stretched tight across a chest thick with muscle, and his arms looked strong enough to break timber with bare hands. Long dark hair fell past his collar, sun-streaked and wild, and a thick beard covered his jaw. His eyes were in startling shade of blue-gray, like storm clouds over mountains, and they swept the street with the careful attention of a man who had spent years surviving in wild places. He carried himself with a quiet confidence that spoke of solitude and self-reliance. A large pack was strapped to his back, and a rifle hung easy in his right hand. Everything about him suggested strength and capability. This was not a town man, Olivia realized. This was someone who lived in the untamed spaces beyond civilization. The mountain man's eyes passed over her without particular interest, though she saw them pause briefly, perhaps noting the black morning dress she wore despite the oppressive heat. Then he was pushing through the door of the general store, disappearing inside. Olivia looked back at the street. Even that brief moment of distraction felt like a betrayal. What right did she have to notice anything about anyone when her family lay cold in the ground? Inside the store, Zachariah Xander was making his supply list with the store owner, a nervous man named Peters who kept glancing at the rifle and the hunting knife strapped to Zachariah's belt. Zachariah was used to such reactions. He came down from his cabin in the Hualapai Mountains every few months when he needed salt, flour, coffee, and ammunition. He preferred the solitude of high country to the noise and complications of towns, but a man had needs that hunting could not meet. "Heard there was trouble on the roads lately," Peter said as he measured out flour. "Robbery gang hit another stage last month, killed a man and his baby daughter. Wife survived, poor creature. She's been sitting outside there for days now, just staring at nothing." Zachariah grunted non-committally. He had learned long ago that tragedies were common in the Arizona territory. Violence and hardship were woven into life out here, and a man could drive himself mad trying to carry other people's sorrows. "She does not eat right, does not hardly talk," Peters continued, unable to resist sharing the town's drama. "Her name's Olivia Morrison. She is from back east originally, came out here with her husband 2 years ago. He was trying to start a freight business. Now she has got nothing and nobody. Her family back east disowned her when she married Morrison because he was not good enough for them, I heard. Some folks say she will not last much longer, the way she is wasting away." Zachariah paid for his supplies and hefted the heavy pack onto his shoulders as if it weighed nothing. As he stepped back outside, his eyes found the woman on the bench again. She was thin, he noticed now, too thin. Her honey-colored hair was pulled back severely, and her face had a hollow quality that spoke of more than just grief. She was starving herself, slowly fading away. It was not his concern. He had his own demons to wrestle with, his own reasons for living alone in the mountains where human voices were rare and precious. He turned toward the livery stable where his mule waited, but something made him stop. Perhaps it was the absolute stillness of her, the way she sat like a ghost already halfway out of the world. Or perhaps it was the memory of his own sister, dead these 10 years, who had looked just like that in the weeks before she gave up entirely and let fever take her after losing her own child. Zachariah cursed himself silently for being a fool, but he turned back. He walked to the bench and stood there, his shadow falling across the woman. She did not look up. "When did you last eat?" His voice was rough from disuse, the words feeling awkward on his tongue after weeks of silence in the high country. Olivia's eyes lifted slowly. Up close, he could see they were a deep brown, like rich earth, but empty of any spark. "Excuse me?" "Food. When did you last eat?" "I do not see how that concerns you, sir." Her voice was cultured, educated, Eastern, like Peters had said. "It concerns me, because you are dying on this bench, and that seems like a waste." Color touched her pale cheeks for the first time, a flush of anger. "You know nothing about me. I know you have stopped fighting. I can see it in you." Zachariah crouched down so they were at eye level, his powerful frame folding with surprising grace. "I know what it looks like when someone decides they are done with living. Then you should understand why I wish to be left alone." But there was something in her voice now, a crack in the numbness. "I understand. Does not mean I'm going to walk away and let you starve yourself to death to join them." He studied her face, seeing beneath the grief to the woman who had existed before. Strong bones, intelligent eyes, a mouth made for laughing. "You think they would want this? Your husband and your baby?" Olivia stood up so fast she swayed, and Zachariah rose quickly, one large hand shooting out to steady her elbow. "Do not speak of them. You have no right." "Maybe not, but I am speaking anyway." He kept his hand on her arm, feeling how fragile she had become beneath the heavy black fabric. "Come on." "Where?" She tried to pull away, but she had no strength to resist as he guided her down the street. "The hotel dining room. You are going to eat." "I do not want to eat. I want you to leave me alone." But she was walking with him anyway, perhaps because she lacked the energy to truly fight, or perhaps because some small part of her recognized that he was not asking. The hotel restaurant was nearly empty in the afternoon lull. Zachariah steered Olivia to a table by the window and pulled out a chair. She sat, looking bewildered, as if uncertain how she had ended up there. "Bring stew, bread, and water," Zachariah told the serving girl who hurried over, her eyes wide at the sight of the massive mountain man. "And keep the bread coming until I say stop." When the girl scurried away, Olivia shook her head. "I will not eat it." "Yes, you will." Zachariah pulled out the chair across from her, and it creaked under his weight as he sat. "Because if you do not, I will sit here all day and all night until you do, and then I will do it again tomorrow." "Why?" The question came out as barely more than a whisper. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Zachariah was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands resting on the table. "I had a sister once, Mary. She lost a baby, and then she lost herself in the grief. I was young, did not know how to help her. I let her fade away, told myself it was her choice and I should respect it. I have regretted that for 10 years. I'm not going to watch it happen again." Olivia stared at him, and for the first time since the robbery, something other than emptiness flickered in her eyes. "I am not your sister." "No, but you are alive, and that means something, even if you cannot feel it right now." The food arrived, and the rich smell of beef stew filled the air. Olivia's stomach growled audibly, betraying her. Zachariah pushed the bowl toward her and said nothing, just waited. She picked up the spoon with a shaking hand. The first bite was automatic, mechanical. The second came easier. By the third, tears were streaming down her face, and she was eating and crying at the same time, her body remembering its hunger, even as her heart protested that she had no right to this, no right to the taste of food or the satisfaction of a filled belly when her family had neither. Zachariah sat silently, watching her eat, his storm-cloud eyes patient and steady. He broke the bread into pieces and pushed them toward her, and she ate those too, unable to stop now that she had started. When the bowl was empty and the bread was gone, Olivia put down the spoon and covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal, the kind of crying that could not be contained any longer. "I miss them so much," she gasped between sobs. "I cannot breathe without them. I do not know how to exist in a world where they do not." "I know," Zachariah said quietly, "but you are still here. That means you have to keep breathing, keep existing, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. They sat there as Olivia wept, and Zachariah did not try to stop her or comfort her with empty words. He simply remained, solid and present, like a mountain that could not be moved. Eventually, the tears subsided. Olivia wiped her face with her napkin, exhausted but somehow lighter, as if the crying had released some of the pressure that had been building inside her for weeks. Thank you, she said finally, her voice hoarse. For the food, Zachariah nodded. Where are you staying? I have a room at the boarding house. Mrs. Henderson took me in after I had no money left for the hotel. You need rest, real rest. He stood, dropping coins on the table to pay for the meal. Come on, I will walk you back. Olivia rose on unsteady legs and Zachariah offered his arm. She hesitated, then took it, feeling the solid strength of him through the buckskin. They walked slowly back through the dusty streets of Kingman, and Olivia was aware of people watching, whispering. The tragic widow and the wild mountain man. An odd pair indeed. At the boarding house steps, Olivia paused. Will you leave town now? Go back to your mountains? Zachariah looked at her thoughtfully. I was planning to head out tomorrow. Oh. She did not know why the thought of him leaving made her chest tighten with something like panic. This stranger had shown her more genuine care in one afternoon than all the pitying townspeople had in weeks. Well, thank you again. Olivia. He spoke her name carefully, as if testing its weight. Will you keep eating? Will you keep fighting? She wanted to lie, to tell him what he wanted to hear, but something about those steady blue-gray eyes demanded honesty. I do not know. I do not know if I can. Zachariah was quiet for a moment, and Olivia could see him wrestling with something internal. Finally, he spoke. What if you came with me? What? She stared at him, certain she had misheard. To the mountains, my cabin. It is quiet up there, peaceful. No one to whisper and pity you, just trees and sky and work to be done. Sometimes a person needs to get away from everything to remember how to live again. You're inviting me to your cabin? A woman you met 3 hours ago? Olivia's mind spun. It was improper, impossible, completely inappropriate. I am inviting someone who is drowning to grab onto something solid, Zachariah corrected. The town is killing you with kindness, the pity, the constant reminders. Up in the high country there is none of that, just survival and simplicity. I cannot simply leave and go live in the wilderness with a strange man. But even as she said it, a part of her was drawn to the idea. To escape the suffocating sympathy, to go somewhere Thomas and baby Clara had never been, where every corner did not hold memories that cut like knives. No, you cannot, Zachariah agreed. But you can hire a guide to take you into the mountains for the summer. The high country is cooler than this desert heat. Good for recovery, for healing. I know these mountains better than any man alive. You would be safe. Safe, Olivia repeated. The word felt foreign. She had not felt safe since the robbery, might never feel truly safe again. Think on it, Zachariah said. I will be at the livery stable tomorrow morning at dawn. If you want to come, be there. If not, I will head up alone and wish you well. He tipped his head to her in a gesture that was almost courtly, despite his rough appearance, and then he walked away, his long strides eating up the distance. Olivia watched him go, her mind whirling with confusion, and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. That night, lying in her narrow bed at the boarding house, Olivia stared at the ceiling and thought about mountains. She thought about escape, about the possibility of breathing air that did not taste like grief and pity. She thought about the mountain man's eyes, how they had looked at her without sympathy but with understanding, which was somehow infinitely more valuable. It was insane, completely improper. A widow was supposed to mourn respectably, to stay in one place and be tragic, and eventually waste away or marry again for security. She was not supposed to run off into the wilderness with a stranger, no matter how compelling his arguments. But what did propriety matter when you had already lost everything that mattered? What did reputation mean when you were drowning in a town full of well-meaning people who saw only your tragedy? Never you? As dawn light began to creep through the window, Olivia made her decision. She rose and packed her few belongings into a canvas bag. She changed from her heavy morning dress into a simpler skirt and blouse, keeping the black armband that marked her widowhood, but shedding the suffocating weight of full mourning attire. She left a note for Mrs. Henderson, thanking her for her kindness, but saying she needed to go away for a while to recover her health. Then she walked through the still sleeping town to the livery stable, her heart pounding. Zachariah was there, loading supplies onto a sturdy mule. He looked up as she approached, and something like satisfaction crossed his bearded face. "You came." "I must be losing my mind," Olivia said. "This is completely improper and probably dangerous, and I do not even know you." "All true," Zachariah agreed. He held out his hand. "Zachariah Xander. I have lived in the Hualapai Mountains for 8 years. I trap, hunt, and sell furs. I'm 32 years old. I've never hurt a woman and do not intend to start. I'm offering you a place to heal, nothing more." Olivia took his hand and shook it formally, feeling calluses thick as leather against her palm. "Olivia Morrison. I am 22. I'm from Philadelphia originally. I'm a widow who apparently makes terrible decisions." A slight smile tugged at Zachariah's mouth, the first she had seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger and less hard. "Sometimes the worst decisions take us to the best places. Or they get us killed. That too. But you were already dying back there on that bench. At least this way, you will see some beautiful country while you decide whether living is worth the effort." The brutal honesty should have offended her. Instead, Olivia found it refreshing. No pity, no false comfort, just truth, stark and clean. "Do you have a horse?" Zachariah asked, all business now. "No, I sold everything after the funeral to pay debts." He nodded and went into the stable, returning with a gentle-looking mare. "This is Sally. She belongs to the livery owner, but he owes me favors. We will borrow her for the summer." Zachariah helped Olivia onto the mare's back, his strong hands steadying her. Then he swung onto his own horse, a huge roan gelding that looked like it had draft horse blood, and took up the mule's lead rope. "It is about 6 hours to the cabin," he said. "We will go slow. If you need to stop, say so." They rode out of Kingman as the sun rose over the desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Olivia did not look back. Whatever lay ahead in the mountains, it had to be better than the hollow existence she was leaving behind. The ride was long and hot at first, following a winding trail up out of the desert floor. Zachariah rode ahead, occasionally glancing back to make sure Olivia was managing. She was not an experienced rider, but Sally was patient and sure-footed. As they climbed higher, the vegetation changed. Desert scrub gave way to juniper and pinon pine, and the air grew cooler, fresher. By midday, they were deep into the mountains, following trails that Olivia would never have found on her own. Zachariah moved through the landscape with complete confidence, reading signs in broken branches and disturbed earth that were invisible to her eyes. They stopped by a clear stream to rest and water the animals. Zachariah pulled out jerky and hardtack from his pack and handed portions to Olivia without asking if she was hungry. She ate mechanically, still not particularly interested in food, but remembering his insistence from the day before. "Why do you live alone in the mountains?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "Do you have no family?" Zachariah chewed thoughtfully before answering. "My parents died of fever when I was 17. My sister Mary, the one I mentioned, she died 3 years after that. I tried town living for a while after, working as a blacksmith in Prescott, but I was angry all the time, getting into fights. A friend suggested I try trapping in the mountains, get away from people for a spell. That was 8 years ago. I found I preferred the solitude." "Do you never get lonely?" "Sometimes, but I find people harder to deal with than loneliness. People lie, hurt each other, make everything complicated. Mountains are honest. A storm is a storm. A bear is a bear. No hidden motives, no false promises." Olivia understood that more than she would have a few months ago. "My parents disowned me when I married Thomas. He was a good man, but he was not wealthy or connected enough for their standards. They said if I married him, I was no longer their daughter. I chose Thomas, and I thought I would never regret it. I had 2 years of happiness with him. Then I had Clara, and for 6 months, everything was perfect." Her voice caught. "And then it was all torn away in minutes." Zachariah handed her his water canteen. "Tell me about them, if you want." And somehow, sitting by that mountain stream with this quiet, strong man, Olivia found she could. She talked about Thomas's laugh, how he had a terrible singing voice but sang anyway, how he had believed so fiercely in his dream of building a freight empire, how Clara had just started smiling, these big gummy grins that lit up her whole face, how she had smelled like milk and sunshine. Zachariah listened without interrupting, his eyes on the flowing water. When she finished, he said simply, "They sound like they were worth loving." They were. They were everything. Then their memories are worth carrying even when they hurt, especially when they hurt. That is how you know the love was real. They rode on as the afternoon wore long. The trail grew steeper, rockier. Olivia's thighs ached from hours in the saddle, but she gritted her teeth and said nothing. She would not complain, would not slow them down. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, they rounded a bend, and Olivia saw it. Zachariah's cabin sat in a small clearing surrounded by tall ponderosa pines. It was sturdy and well-built, made of thick logs chinked with mud and moss. A stone chimney rose from one side, and a covered porch ran along the front. Behind it, she could see an outhouse and a small shed that probably served as a stable. "Home," Zachariah said simply, and there was pride in his voice. "I built it myself." They dismounted, and Olivia swayed as her feet hit solid ground, her legs cramping after the long ride. Zachariah steadied her with a hand on her arm. "You will be sore tomorrow, but it passes." He took care of the animals first, unsaddling them and rubbing them down, putting them in the shed with feed and water. Only then did he lead Olivia to the cabin. Inside, it was a single large room with a sleeping loft above. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with cooking implements hanging nearby. There was a rough-hewn table and 2 chairs, open shelves holding supplies and dishes, furs piled in one corner. Everything was neat and organized, the space of a man who valued order. "The loft is yours," Zachariah said. "I will sleep down here. There's a ladder on that side." Olivia climbed up to find a simple but comfortable space under the peaked roof. A rope bed held a mattress stuffed with pine needles and covered with soft furs. There was a trunk for storage and a small window that looked out over the clearing. It smelled of pine and wood smoke, clean and wild. She came back down to find Zachariah starting a fire. "Thank you," she said, "for all of this. I know it is strange having me here." "You can earn your keep," Zachariah said. "I'm not good at cooking beyond the basics. If you can improve the food situation, I would count that a fair trade." The idea of having something useful to do, some purpose, was appealing. "I can cook. My mother insisted I learn, even though she thought I would have servants to do it. The skills came in handy when Thomas and I were starting out." "Good. There's a garden out back that needs tending too. Previous owner started it and I've kept it going, but I'm better with wild things than cultivated ones." They fell into an easy routine over the following days. Olivia woke each morning to find Zachariah already up, often returned from checking trap lines or hunting. He would leave her coffee warming by the fire and disappear again, giving her space and solitude. She worked in the garden, pulling weeds and watering plants, finding unexpected peace in the simple, repetitive tasks. She cooked meals from the supplies Zachariah kept stocked and the fresh meat he brought in, rabbit, venison, even trout from the streams. The mountain man was as good as his word. He made no improper advances, treated her with quiet respect. They ate meals together in companionable silence, neither feeling the need to fill the air with meaningless chatter. Sometimes in the evenings they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, and Olivia would feel something in her chest loosen, just slightly. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after their arrival, Olivia was picking beans in the garden when she heard a sound that made her blood freeze. A deep, huffing grunt, followed by the crash of something large moving through the brush. She turned slowly and found herself staring at a black bear, massive and shaggy, standing at the edge of the clearing not 20 yards away. Her scream was instinctive, high and sharp with terror. The bear's head swung toward her, and it rose up on its hind legs, easily 7 feet tall, and roared. Olivia could not move, frozen by primal fear. The bear dropped to all fours and took a step toward her. Then Zachariah was there, seeming to materialize from nowhere, putting himself between Olivia and the bear. He spread his arms wide, making himself look even larger than he already was, and roared back at the bear, a sound so deep and fierce it seemed to come from the earth itself. The bear hesitated, swinging its head from side to side. Zachariah took a step forward, still roaring, his whole body radiating aggression and dominance. The bear woofed, uncertain now. Zachariah picked up a rock and hurled it, striking the bear on the shoulder. It landed with a heavy thud. The bear decided this particular human was not worth the trouble. It dropped to all fours and lumbered back into the forest, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Zachariah stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, making sure the threat was truly gone. Then he turned to Olivia, and his expression shifted from fierce to concerned. "Are you hurt?" Olivia could not answer. She was shaking violently, her knees giving out. Zachariah caught her before she hit the ground, sweeping her up in his arms as if she weighed nothing. He carried her to the cabin, kicked the door open, and set her carefully in one of the chairs. "Breathe," he said, crouching in front of her, his large hands gentle on her shoulders. "You are safe. It is gone." "You could have been killed," Olivia gasped when she could speak. "It could have killed you. Black bears are mostly bluff. You make yourself bigger and meaner, they usually back down." "Usually." He offered a slight grin. "Besides, I am very hard to kill." Despite everything, Olivia laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "You are insane. You just faced down a bear with your bare hands." "I have done it before. Probably will again. This is their home too. We just have to make sure they know who is dominant." The shaking was subsiding, but Olivia found she did not want Zachariah to move away. His presence was grounding, solid, and real. "Thank you for protecting me." "Always," he said simply, and something in his eyes made Olivia's breath catch. There was an intensity there, a fierce protectiveness that went beyond simple obligation. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was quite ready to name. Then Zachariah cleared his throat and stood, stepping back. "I should check the perimeter, make sure the bear does not return." After he left, Olivia sat in the chair and pressed her hands to her hot cheeks. What was happening to her? When had this rough mountain man become the center of her awareness? When had she started listening for the sound of his footsteps, looking forward to their quiet meals together, feeling safest when he was near? It had been less than 3 weeks since Thomas died. 3 weeks since she had buried her husband and daughter. She should still be drowning in grief, should not have room for any other feeling. But somehow, here in these mountains with Zachariah, the grief had shifted. It was still there, still heavy, but no longer suffocating. It had become something she carried rather than something that consumed her. And alongside the grief, other feelings were beginning to emerge. Gratitude, certainly, but also attraction, the awareness of Zachariah as a man, strong and capable and unexpectedly kind. The guilt hit her like a physical blow. How could she feel attracted to anyone when Thomas had been dead such a short time? What kind of wife, what kind of mother, moved on so quickly? But a voice in her head, one that sounded suspiciously like Zachariah's rough rumble, whispered that she was not moving on. She was surviving. She was learning to live with the loss rather than die from it. And was that not what Thomas would have wanted? He had loved her so fiercely, so completely. He would have wanted her to find joy again, to build a new life from the ashes of the old one. Still, the guilt lingered as Olivia went about preparing dinner. When Zachariah returned and they sat down to eat, she was quiet, withdrawn into her own thoughts. "Something wrong with the food?" Zachariah asked, noticing she was pushing it around her plate more than eating. "No, the food is fine. I'm just thinking." "About the bear?" "About everything." Olivia set down her fork. "Zachariah, can I ask you something?" "You can ask me anything. Do you think it is wrong for someone to have feelings again after losing a spouse, if not much time has passed?" Zachariah was quiet for a long moment, his blue-gray eyes studying her face. "I think," he said carefully, "that grief is not a simple thing. It does not follow rules or timelines. And I think that feeling something other than pain does not mean you have forgotten or stopped loving the people you lost. It just means you are still alive, and being alive means feeling all sorts of things, even when it seems wrong." "I feel guilty," Olivia admitted, "for not hurting as much as I did. for laughing at your joke earlier about the bear, for noticing that you have kind eyes and strong hands, for feeling safe here with you when I should still be drowning in grief. Olivia. Zachariah reached across the table and took her hand, his rough fingers curling around hers. You are not betraying them by healing. You are honoring them by choosing to keep living. That is the hardest, bravest thing you can do. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. I miss them so much. But I do not want to die anymore. And I feel guilty about that too. I know. Zachariah stood and came around the table, pulling her up and into his arms. It was the first time he had embraced her, and Olivia buried her face in his chest, feeling the solid wall of muscle beneath the soft buckskin, breathing in the scent of pine and wood smoke that clung to him. His arms came around her, strong and secure, and she felt safe in a way she had not since before the robbery. They stood like that for a long time, and Olivia let herself cry, but these were different tears than before. These were tears of release, of acknowledgement. She was grieving and healing at the same time, and Zachariah held her through both, asking nothing, offering everything. When she finally pulled back, Zachariah brushed the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs, his touch gentle despite the calluses. Better? Yes, thank you. Olivia looked up at him, at the strong lines of his face softened by concern, at the eyes that saw her completely, tragedy and all, and still looked at her with warmth. You are a remarkable man, Zachariah Xander. I'm just a man who knows what it is like to hurt, and who does not want to watch someone else give up the way my sister did. But his eyes held more than simple compassion. There was warmth there, and growing affection, and something deeper that made Olivia's heart beat faster. The summer days passed in a rhythm that felt almost healing. Olivia grew stronger, both physically and emotionally. The mountain air and good food filled out her frame, putting healthy color back in her cheeks. She learned the patterns of wilderness life, how to read weather in the clouds, how to identify animal tracks, which plants were edible and which were poison. Zachariah was a patient teacher, never making her feel foolish for her ignorance. She also learned about him in small increments, how he had a gift for carving, whittling intricate figures from wood during evening hours, how he had a deep respect for the natural world and took only what he needed, wasting nothing, how he was patient with her moods, giving her space when she needed to cry, offering silent companionship when she needed to not be alone. One morning, about 6 weeks into their time in the mountains, Olivia woke before dawn to the sound of rain on the cabin roof. She lay in the loft listening to the gentle patter, feeling oddly content. When she climbed down the ladder, she found Zachariah already up, working on repairing a leather harness by firelight. Morning, he said, glancing up with a slight smile. That smile had been appearing more frequently lately, and each time it did, Olivia felt warmth bloom in her chest. Good morning. I will start breakfast. They worked in companionable silence, Olivia cooking while Zachariah continued his repair work. The rain created a cozy intimacy, sealing them into the cabin together. After they ate, Zachariah said, "No sense going out in this weather. Good day to stay in and work on indoor tasks." Olivia was secretly pleased. She enjoyed Zachariah's company, looked forward to their conversations. What needs doing? I have furs that need scraping and stretching, and that shelf in the corner has been threatening to fall for weeks. I should fix it before it dumps everything on the floor. They worked through the morning, the rain steady outside. Olivia watched Zachariah work on the shelf, admiring the easy competence of his movements, the flex of muscles in his arms and back as he hammered and adjusted. He had removed his shirt because of the heat from the fire, and she found herself staring at the broad expanse of his back, the play of muscle beneath tanned skin marked here and there with scars that told stories of a hard life. Zachariah glanced back and caught her looking. Their eyes met, and Olivia felt heat rise in her cheeks. But Zachariah did not look away or tease her. Instead, his expression grew serious, intense. "Olivia," he said, setting down his tools, "I need to tell you something." Her heart started beating faster. "What is it?" He came over to where she sat working on the furs, crouching down beside her. "When I brought you up here, I told myself it was just to help you heal, to give you a chance to recover. I told myself I would keep it simple, professional, just a man helping someone who needed it." "But?" Olivia prompted when he paused. but I have come to care for you. More than I intended, more than I probably should given the circumstances and how recently you lost your husband." His blue-gray eyes were earnest, vulnerable in a way she had not seen before. "I have feelings for you, Olivia. Deep ones, and I needed to be honest about that, even if it is not what you want to hear." Olivia's breath caught. Her mind raced, heart pounding. "Zachariah, You do not have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I know it is too soon. I know you are still grieving. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know the truth, because I do not lie, and I do not play games. If my feelings make you uncomfortable, I can take you back to Kingman tomorrow." "No," the word burst out before she could think. "No, I do not want to go back, and your feelings do not make me uncomfortable. They make me feel," she struggled to find words. "They make me feel alive, scared, guilty, confused, but alive. Guilty because you have feelings too?" Zachariah's voice was quiet, careful. Olivia nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "I have been trying not to. Trying to tell myself it is too soon, that I am betraying Thomas's memory. But I cannot help it. You have been so kind to me, so patient. You see me as a person, not just a tragedy. And you are," she gestured helplessly at him. "You are good and strong, and you make me feel safe. How could I not have feelings for you?" Zachariah reached out and cupped her face in his large hand, his thumb stroking her cheek. "There is no betrayal in moving forward, Olivia. Love does not end when someone dies, but life goes on anyway. Thomas loved you, wanted you to be happy. Do you think he would want you to spend the rest of your life alone and miserable?" "No," Olivia whispered. "He would want me to live. He would want me to find joy again, but it still feels wrong, like I am leaving him behind." "You are not leaving him behind. You are carrying him forward in your heart while making room for new experiences, new feelings. Both things can be true at once." Zachariah's eyes searched hers. "I'm not asking you to forget him or replace him. I'm just asking if maybe, in time, you could make room for me too." Olivia turned her face into his palm, closing her eyes. "I think I already have, and that terrifies me." "Because you might lose again?" "Yes, exactly that. I cannot promise you that will not happen. Life in the territory is hard and dangerous, and tomorrow is never guaranteed." Zachariah's voice was rough with emotion. "But I can promise I will fight like hell to stay alive and keep you safe. I can promise I will never take a single day with you for granted. And I can promise that whatever time we have, I will fill it with as much care and respect and love as I am capable of giving." Olivia opened her eyes and looked at him, at this strong, scarred, impossibly gentle man who had pulled her from the edge of death and shown her how to live again. The guilt was still there, a whisper in the back of her mind, but it was quieter now, overshadowed by something bigger. Hope, possibility, the tentative, terrifying promise of happiness. "I'm not ready yet," she said honestly, "to fully commit to something new. The grief is still too raw, too present. I know, and I am willing to wait, however long it takes. But I do have feelings for you, real ones, and I think, given time, they could become something deeper." A smile broke across Zachariah's face, transforming his stern features into something boyish and joyful. "That is more than enough for now. We have time, Olivia. All the time you need." He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she did not, he pressed his lips to her forehead, a kiss so gentle and reverent it brought tears to her eyes. Then he stood and went back to his work on the shelf, whistling softly under his breath. Olivia returned to the furs, but her hands were shaking and her heart was full. Something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that could not be taken back. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since the robbery, she could imagine one. A future here in the mountains with Zachariah, building something new from the wreckage of her past. The rain continued through the afternoon, and they worked in a comfortable silence charged with new awareness. Every glance, every accidental touch felt weighted with meaning. When their hands brushed reaching for the same tool, Olivia felt electricity shoot through her. When Zachariah smiled at her across the cabin, she felt warmth pool in her belly. As evening approached and Olivia started dinner, Zachariah came up behind her at the stove. He did not touch her, but she could feel the heat of him, the presence of his large body close to hers. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me a chance. For being honest about your feelings. For not running away when I told you about mine." Olivia turned to face him, looking up at his bearded face, his storm-cloud eyes. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for caring when you had no reason to, for giving me a place to heal. You are worth seeing, Olivia Morrison, worth caring about." His hand came up to tuck a strand of honey-colored hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her jaw. "I'm going to spend every day proving that to you, if you will let me." "I would like that," Olivia whispered. They stood there, inches apart, the air between them crackling with possibility. Then Zachariah stepped back, giving her space, and the moment passed. But the promise remained, hanging between them like morning mist. The summer wore on, and their relationship deepened in slow, careful increments. Zachariah courted her in his own way, bringing her wildflowers from the high meadows, carving her a set of beautiful wooden spoons, teaching her to fish in the cold mountain streams. He kissed her sometimes now, sweet, gentle kisses that made her feel cherished and desired in equal measure. He never pushed for more, seemed content to let things progress at whatever pace she needed. Olivia found herself falling in love with him truly and deeply. Not the passionate, all-consuming love she had felt for Thomas, but something quieter, steadier. A love built on respect and understanding, on shared work and comfortable silences. A love that felt like coming home. One night in late August, they sat on the porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Olivia was leaning against Zachariah's shoulder, his arm around her waist, and she felt peaceful in a way she had not thought possible 3 months ago. "I have been thinking," Zachariah said, his deep voice rumbling through his chest, "about the future." "What about it?" "Winter is coming in a few months. I usually stay up here year-round, but it is hard living. Snow can get 6 feet deep. Temperatures drop below zero. It's not a place for someone who is not used to it." Olivia's stomach tightened with anxiety. "Are you saying I need to go back to Kingman?" "I am saying we need to decide what you want to do. You could go back to town if you wanted. Or—" He paused and she felt tension in his frame. "Or you could stay. With me. Permanently." Olivia sat up and turned to face him. "Zachariah, what are you saying?" He took her hands in his, those large, calloused hands that had become so dear to her. "I'm saying I love you, Olivia. I'm saying I want you in my life, not just for a summer, but for all the seasons to come. I'm asking you to marry me, if you will have me, if you are ready." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "I love you too, so much, but I'm scared. Scared of dishonoring Thomas's memory, scared of losing again, scared that I'm being foolish and rushing into things." "Those are all reasonable fears," Zachariah said. "But let me ask you this. If Thomas could speak to you right now, what would he say?" Olivia closed her eyes, thinking of her husband, his kind face, his gentle hands, his generous heart. "He would say he loved me. He would say he wanted me to be happy. He would say," her voice broke, "he would say that love is too rare and precious to run from, even when it is scary." "Then do not run, Olivia. Stay with me. Build a life with me. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved." Olivia opened her eyes and looked at Zachariah, at the man who had saved her life and then taught her how to live it again. The guilt was still there, probably always would be in some small measure, but it was overwhelmed now by love and hope and the bone-deep certainty that this was right. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Zachariah pulled her into his arms and kissed her, deeply and thoroughly, with all the passion he had been holding back for months. Olivia kissed him back, feeling desire kindle inside her, hot and bright and wonderfully, terrifyingly alive. They were married a week later by a traveling preacher who came through the mountains ministering to trappers and prospectors. The ceremony was simple, held in the clearing outside the cabin with only the trees as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself from fabric Zachariah had bought on his last supply run. Zachariah wore clean buckskins and had trimmed his beard. They spoke their vows with the sun warm on their faces and birds singing in the pines. That night, Zachariah carried her over the threshold of the cabin that was now truly their home. He set her down gently, and Olivia looked up at her husband, her heart full to bursting. "I never thought I would feel this way again," she said. "Happy, hopeful, in love." "You deserve all of that and more," Zachariah said, cupping her face in his hands. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." He kissed her again, and this time when desire flared between them, there was no reason to hold back. Zachariah swept her into his arms and carried her up to the loft, to the bed they would now share. He was gentle with her, patient and caring, making sure she felt cherished and safe. And Olivia gave herself to him completely, trusting him with her body as she had already trusted him with her wounded heart. Afterward, they lay tangled together under the firs, Olivia's head on Zachariah's broad chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "None. You?" "Only that I did not find you sooner. But then again, maybe we needed to live through all that pain to be ready for each other." Olivia thought about that, about Thomas and Clara, about the tragedy that had shattered her world, about Zachariah's lost sister and his years of solitude. How all of it had led them to this moment, to this unlikely love story in a mountain cabin far from civilization. "I think you might be right," she said. "I think we needed to be broken before we could put each other back together." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's warmth, and Olivia slept without nightmares for the first time in months. The winter that year was hard, just as Zachariah had warned. Snow piled high around the cabin, and temperatures plunged. But inside, they were warm and content. They spent long evenings by the fire, Zachariah working on his carvings while Olivia sewed or read aloud from the few books they owned. They made love often, finding comfort and joy in each other's bodies. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning the contours of each other's minds as thoroughly as they had learned each other's bodies. In the spring, when the snow melted and the world turned green again, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Zachariah one morning while he was chopping wood, the words tumbling out before she lost her nerve. He froze mid-swing, the axe suspended in the air. Then he set it down carefully and turned to face her. "A baby?" She nodded, terrified of his reaction. They had never discussed children, and she knew her pregnancy would bring back memories of Clara, of everything she had lost. Zachariah crossed to her in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees in front of her, pressing his face against her still flat belly. "A baby," he repeated, and his voice was choked with emotion. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Olivia asked, running her fingers through his long hair. He looked up at her, and there were tears on his cheeks. "I'm terrified, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm happier than I have ever been in my entire life." "I'm scared too," Olivia admitted. "Scared something will go wrong. Scared I will lose this baby like I lost Clara." "We will get through it together," Zachariah said fiercely. "And this time, you have me to protect you both. I swear on my life, I will keep you safe." The pregnancy progressed, and Olivia bloomed with it. Zachariah was attentive and protective, sometimes comically so, refusing to let her do anything he deemed too strenuous. When her time drew near, he took her down to Kingman so she could deliver with a midwife in attendance, unwilling to risk anything going wrong in the mountains. The townspeople were shocked to see her return, even more shocked to see her obviously pregnant and glowing with health, married to the wild mountain man. The whispers started immediately, but Olivia found she did not care. Let them talk. She knew her own truth. She gave birth on a warm September evening, laboring through the afternoon with Zachariah holding her hand, refusing to leave her side despite the midwife's scandalized protests that birthing was women's work. When their son finally arrived, red-faced and squalling, Zachariah wept openly, cradling the tiny baby in his huge hands with infinite gentleness. "What should we name him?" Olivia asked, exhausted and elated. "I was thinking, Thomas," Zachariah said quietly, "after your first husband, to honor his memory." Fresh tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. "That is perfect. Thomas it is." Little Thomas Xander was a healthy, happy baby who seemed to thrive in the mountain air. They returned to the cabin when he was 2 weeks old, and Olivia felt herself settle into a new kind of happiness. She had not forgotten Clara, never would, but she had learned that love was not finite, that she could love this new baby fiercely while still carrying Clara in her heart. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, and they named her Mary for Zachariah's sister. She had her father's blue-gray eyes and her mother's honey-colored hair, and she was fearless from the start, toddling after her older brother and trying to explore everything. The years flowed past like the streams that cut through the mountains, bringing changes and challenges. They added rooms to the cabin as their family grew. Zachariah taught Thomas to hunt and trap, passing on the skills that had kept him alive for so many years. Olivia taught both children to read and write, determined they would have education even in the wilderness. They went down to Kingman a few times a year for supplies and to let the children see other people, but the mountains were their true home. Here, they had built a life of simple joys and hard work, of love and laughter and the occasional hardship that they weathered together. On their 10th anniversary, Zachariah surprised Olivia by taking her back to the spot where they had first met, the bench outside the general store in Kingman. It was a warm summer day, and the town was busy with the usual traffic of miners, cowboys, and settlers. "Why are we here?" Olivia asked, confused. "Because this is where it all started," Zachariah said, "where I first saw you and could not walk away. I wanted to come back and remember how far we have come." Olivia looked at the bench, remembering the hollow-eyed woman she had been, drowning in grief and ready to give up on life entirely. Then she looked at Zachariah, at the man who had refused to let her fade away, who had shown her that it was possible to survive the unsurvivable. "I was dying on this bench," she said, "and you brought me back to life." "We brought each other back," Zachariah corrected. "I was half dead in those mountains hiding from the world. You reminded me why connection matters, why love is worth the risk." He pulled her into his arms, right there on the street, not caring who saw, and kissed her with all the passion and tenderness of their first kiss and every kiss since. When they finally broke apart, Olivia was breathless and smiling. "Take me home," she said, "to our real home in the mountains." They rode back to the cabin as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Thomas and Mary were waiting on the porch, having been looked after by a neighbor for the day. The children ran to greet them, and Zachariah scooped them both up, one in each powerful arm, making them shriek with delight. Olivia watched her family, her heart so full it ached. She thought of Thomas Morrison sometimes, her first husband, and Clara, the daughter she had lost. The pain of their absence had faded to a sweet, sad ache, a reminder of love that endured beyond death. She carried them with her always, but they no longer defined her. She was Olivia Xander now, wife to a mountain man, mother to 2 wild, wonderful children, survivor of tragedy and builder of joy. She had been touched by tragedy, had almost let it destroy her. But Zachariah had touched her with love instead, patient and persistent and real. And together, they had healed. That night, after the children were asleep in their room and the cabin was quiet, Olivia and Zachariah lay together in their bed under the loft window, watching stars wheel across the sky. "Do you ever regret it?" Olivia asked, "giving up your solitude for a noisy family?" Zachariah pulled her closer, his strong arms wrapped around her. "Not for a single moment. I thought I needed solitude to survive. Turns out what I really needed was you. And I thought I would never be happy again after losing Thomas and Clara. But here I am, more content than I ever imagined possible." She turned to face him, tracing the lines of his bearded face with gentle fingers. "Thank you for not walking away that day. Thank you for forcing me to eat, to live, to fight. Thank you for trusting me enough to come to the mountains, for taking a chance on a rough man who had forgotten how to be around people." They kissed, slow and deep, a kiss that held 10 years of shared history, of struggles overcome and joys multiplied. Then they simply held each other, listening to the night sounds of the mountains, to their children's soft breathing from the next room, to the strong, steady rhythm of each other's hearts. Olivia thought about the journey that had brought her here, from that terrible day of the robbery to this moment of perfect peace. The pain had been real, the loss devastating, but it had not destroyed her. With Zachariah's help, she had transformed it, had found a way to carry grief and joy simultaneously, to honor the past while embracing the future. In the morning, there would be chores to do, meals to cook, children to teach and love. There would be the endless work of maintaining life in the wilderness, the challenges of raising a family far from civilization. But there would also be laughter and love, strong arms to hold her when memories cut too deep, and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. Years continued to pass in their mountain haven. Thomas grew into a young man much like his father, tall and strong and capable, with a gift for reading the wilderness in an easy way with animals. Mary proved to be clever and quick, fascinated by plants and their medicinal properties, learning everything she could from her mother about healing herbs. When Thomas turned 16 and Mary 14, Olivia became pregnant again, a surprise that left both her and Zachariah stunned and delighted. She was 38 now, not a young woman anymore, but healthy and strong from years of mountain living. Their third child, a son they named Samuel, arrived just as the aspens turned gold that autumn. He was a quiet baby, observant and calm, and he seemed to complete their family in a way that felt exactly right. As Samuel grew, Olivia sometimes caught Zachariah watching their children with an expression of wonder, as if he still could not quite believe this was his life. She understood the feeling. There were moments when she looked around at her home, her family, her strong husband, and felt a surge of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. She had survived the unsurvivable. She had lost everything and found it again, different, but no less precious. She had learned that the human heart had an infinite capacity for love, that healing was not betrayal, and that choosing to live after tragedy was not dishonoring the dead, but celebrating everything they had given you. On a crisp October evening, when Olivia was 45 and Zachariah 55, they sat together on their porch, watching the sunset over the mountains they had called home for so many years. Their children were grown now. Thomas had married and built his own cabin a few miles away, bringing his wife to meet the parents who had raised him with such love. Mary had gone to Prescott to study medicine with a doctor there, her brilliant mind hungry for knowledge. Samuel, at 7, was inside the cabin doing his lessons by lamplight, his small face scrunched in concentration. "Can you believe it has been 25 years?" Olivia asked, leaning against Zachariah's shoulder in the way that had become as natural as breathing. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like forever." Zachariah's arm came around her, solid and warm. "Do you ever regret any of it?" "Never, not a single moment." Olivia tilted her face up to look at him. His beard was streaked with gray now, his hair more silver than brown. There were deep lines around his eyes and across his forehead. But to her, he was as beautiful as the day he had stood in front of a bear to protect her, all fierce strength and unwavering courage. "Good, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. You turned my lonely cabin into a home, my survival into a life worth living." "We did that for each other," Olivia said. "We saved each other." Zachariah kissed the top of her head, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened and stars began to emerge. Inside the cabin, Samuel called out that he had finished his lessons, and Olivia smiled. "I should go help him get ready for bed." "I will be here," Zachariah said, as he always did, and he always was, constant as the mountains themselves, solid and steadfast and true. Later that night, lying in bed with Zachariah's deep, even breathing beside her, Olivia thought about the woman she had been on that bench in Kingman a quarter-century ago. Broken, hopeless, ready to give up. If she could go back and tell that woman what the future held, would she believe it? Would she have hope? Olivia thought she would, because even in her darkest moment, even drowning in grief, there had been a tiny spark of something left inside her. And Zachariah had seen that spark and fanned it into flame, patiently and persistently, until she burned bright again. She had been touched by tragedy. The scars would always remain, the memories of Thomas Morrison and baby Clara forever etched in her heart. But she had also been touched by love, by a mountain man with kind eyes and strong hands who had shown her that healing was possible, that joy could follow sorrow, that life could be rebuilt from ashes. And it had been. Oh, it had been. Olivia closed her eyes and let sleep take her, secure in the warmth of her husband's presence, grateful for every moment that had led her to this place, this life, this love. In the morning, there would be new challenges, new joys, new moments to treasure. But for now there was this: peace, contentment, and the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The mountains stood eternal outside their window, watching over their small cabin and the family within. And in the darkness, in the quiet hours before dawn, Olivia Morrison Xander slept without nightmares, held safe in the arms of the man who had saved her life by teaching her how to live it. Their story was one of tragedy transformed into triumph, of grief alchemized into grace. It was a story of two wounded people who found each other when they needed it most and built something beautiful from their broken pieces. It was a story of the Wild West, of survival and strength, but most of all, it was a story of love, the kind of love that heals, that endures, that makes every hardship worthwhile. And it was a story with a happy ending, which is sometimes the bravest kind of all.